You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Thursday, October 25th, 2018. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we have been talking about Pope St. John Paul the Great and learning as much as we can from him on the topic of bravery. We've talked about his early life before he became Pope. We talked about how he directly took on communism in his home country of Poland and how 10 years later, it led to the complete fall of communism. We've also talked about how he really sought after unity and reached out to groups that had been broken or estranged from the Catholic Church for centuries. Today, we are going to talk about Pope St. John Paul II's call to universal holiness, meaning he believed and he preached that every single person, no matter where they live, their gender, if they have a disability, if they are young, he believed that every single person was called to holiness and that God had a plan for our holiness no matter who we might be. Now, this goes very much in hand with what we were talking about yesterday. Pope John Paul II sought unity because he believed that there was good in everyone, in every group, and that there was so much to love in each and every person. He took that just a step further and said that we had the responsibility and the calling to seek after holiness no matter who we might be. Now, it might be easy to think that the really holy people are the nuns and the priests, and that the rest of us, those that maybe are called to marriage or the single life, that we aren't necessarily called to be as holy as they are. Well, that's not what Pope St. John Paul II believed, not at all. He believed that every single person was called to holiness. In fact, he wrote many things on this. Two of his most well-known works, The Theology of the Body and Love and Responsibility, talk about how to be holy in marriage and family. Not everyone is called to be a religious person, and he says that being in a marriage and being part of a family are a great opportunity to be holy and to be a saint. He also believed in the right to life and that we should respect life. We are all called to holiness, no matter how old we are. And every life, even the tiniest little baby that is yet to be born, is called to holiness too. We should allow that child to be born, to be formed as God sees fit, and allow them to answer their own unique call to holiness. Pope John Paul II spread this everywhere, and in fact, during his papacy, he established something called World Youth Day, where there would be a big event in one city, and youth from across the world would gather to have their Pope's attention. So he could look at them no matter how old they are and remind them that they are called to great things for our Lord and that they are called to holiness too. And so, Sprouts, here is my challenge for you today. I want you to take this universal call to holiness seriously. And I want you to pray to our great intercessor, Pope St. John Paul II, and say this prayer. Pope St. John Paul II, please intercede for me with God that I might answer this call to holiness and become the great being that you created me to be. That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. one final word to the grown-ups. Thank you so much for listening to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. I would like to invite you to join a special Facebook group just for those that listen to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. We will use this group to connect, to share resources around that week's theme, and simply celebrate raising future saints. To find the direct link to the Facebook group, simply check the notes for this podcast episode.